Reading through the Bible in 1 year, January 25th, Genesis 26, Matthew 25, Esther chapter 2, and Acts 25. Now, there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and to your descendants I will give all these lands, and will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and will give your descendants all these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed." It's the same thing he said to Abraham. So Isaac lived in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." For he was afraid to say, "my wife," thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful. It came about when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out through a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was caressing his wife Rebekah. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is certainly your wife. How then did you say, 'She is my sister'?" And Isaac said to him, "Because I said I might die on account of her." Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech charged all the people, saying, "He who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Now Isaac sowed in the land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And he became rich and continued to grow richer until he became very wealthy, for he had possessions of flocks and herds and a great household, so that the Philistines envied him. Now all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines stopped up by filling them with earth. Then Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are too powerful for us." And Isaac departed from there, and camped in the valley of Gerar, and settled there. Then Isaac dug again the wells of water which had been dug in the days of his father Abraham. For the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham, and he gave them the same names which his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley, and found there a well of flowing water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with the herdsmen of Isaac, saying, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek, because they contended with him. Esek meaning contention. Yeah, I was right. Then they dug another well and quarreled over it too. So he named it Sitnah, which means quarreling, enmity. There we go. He moved away from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so he named it Rehoboth, which means broad places. For he said, at last the Lord has made room for us. We will be fruitful in the land. Then he went up from there to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord, and he pitched his tent there, and Isaac's servants dug a well. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar with his advisor Ahuzath, and Phicol, the commander of his army. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, since you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So he said, "Let there now be an oath between us, even between you and us. Let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you, and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord." Then he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. Then Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. Now it came about on the same day that Isaac's servants came in and told him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." So he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. Beersheba that goes back to Genesis 21:31. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. He's the one who married her, or them. So let me see. Yep, and that's all the notes. Cool. Let's go on to Matthew 25. Jesus continues. Then the kingdom of heaven will be comparable to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the prudent took oil in flasks along with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep. But at midnight there was a shout, "Behold, the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. But the foolish said to the prudent, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the prudent answered, "No, there will not be enough for us and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later, the other virgins came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up for us." But he answered, "Truly, I say to you, I do not know you. Be on alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour." The delay of Christ's return distinguishes the wise from the foolish. Being ready means being prepared for a long delay. Short-lived zeal is inadequate. That's what happens with those who are foolish. For it is like a man, or just like a man, about to go on a journey, who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. So he knows what they can do, and he gave to them according to that. And he went away on his journey. Immediately, the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner, the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away, and dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, "Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful slave. You are faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." Also, the one who had received 2 talents came up and said, "Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I have gained 2 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful slave. You are faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." And the one who had received the 1 talent came up and said, "Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours." He was afraid he was going to squander it or do something wrong, and he didn't want to get in trouble, so he just hid this talent, or hid the money that was given to him, and didn't do anything with it. But his master answered and said to him, "You wicked and lazy slave. You knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received back my money with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But the one who does not have, even what he does have will be taken away. Throw the worthless slave out to the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Quick note here. You see the guy who had the 5 talents? He's referred to as the one who has 10 talents. He still has control over the 5 talents he started with and the 5 that he created. That's basically a sign to remind us to be diligent with the gifts that we've been given from God, to actually use them. Talk to people about Jesus. Reflect in your life outside of your church and outside of your home in such a way that people will look at you and go, "Wow, this person's a Christian, aren't they?" But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." So much in here. It was prepared for them. He knew who they were. He knows his sheep, and they know him. These are the ones for whom the kingdom has been prepared from before the world was even created, before the universe existed. It's amazing to see. And he elaborates on this. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" The king will answer and say to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me." Then he will also say to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels." So people who believe that hell is going to be this great place of partying for all these people who are anti-Christ and they hate Jesus and it's going to be a great time. No. They don't get to rule and reign and have fun with Satan. And I've had friends tell me this. They tell me that they look forward to hell because they don't have to deal with Christians anymore and how wonderful it's going to be. Let me read this again. Into the eternal fire. That doesn't mean fire that just lasts a long time. It literally means fire existing in a place with no time, where time doesn't exist. There is no today and tomorrow. There's nothing for you to realize that time has even passed. It just lasts eternally. There's no hope of a future ending. There's no thought that maybe tomorrow it'll be different, because there is no tomorrow. It literally does not exist. That is what eternity means. That's the eternal fire. And it's not prepared for the devil and his angels to have fun in, and and so the devil's going to be ruling and reigning over this place. Nor is it, as I've heard some terrible pastors say, a place where it's just a place without God. No, God will be there in his full wrath. He will be ever present in that wrath. Eternally present in his wrath. And Satan will be tortured right along next to you. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire, which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they themselves will also answer, "Lord," again, see how they refer to him as Lord? "When did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." These will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Let's go to Esther chapter 2. After these things, remember, King Ahasuerus had a huge party that lasted 6 months. And on the last week of it, that's when it kind of rolled to this massive crescendo. And he was very drunk, and he commanded his servants to bring his wife so he could show her off because she was hot, and he wanted to show off how hot she was. And she said, "No, I'm not going to go." And because she said no to the king, not only the king of one small city or one small area, he's the king of the Medes and Persians, over 127 provinces, a massive, massive area. And when she said no to him, his advisors rightly said, if this gets out, this is going to be bad. Because everyone else is going to be like, well, if even the king's wife doesn't listen to him, why do I have to listen to you? It's going to be terrible. So the plan was laid out that she was going to be locked up somewhere else. She's no longer going to be called a queen. And they're going to have this great, who wants to be a queen kind of contest where they're going to look throughout the whole land for the most beautiful woman who can be the queen. And then she would be the queen. So they're looking for this worthy successor. And the king agreed. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's attendants who served him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. Let the king appoint overseers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that he may gather every beautiful young virgin to the citadel of Susa, to the harem, and to the custody of Haggai the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let their cosmetics be given to them. Then let the young lady who pleases the king be queen in place of Vashti." And the matter pleased the king, and he did accordingly. Now there was at the citadel in Susa a Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the captives who had been exiled with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had exiled. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. Now the young lady was beautiful and of form and face, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it came about when the command and decree of the king were heard, and many young ladies were gathered to the citadel of Susa, in the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken into the king's palace, into the custody of Haggai, who was in charge of the women. Now, the young lady pleased him and found favor with him, so he quickly provided her with her cosmetics and food, and gave her 7 choice maids from the king's palace, and transferred her and her maids to the best place in the harem. Esther did not make known her people or her kindred, for Mordecai had instructed her that she should not make them known, because again, they were exiles, right? These are people that had been conquered. Every day, Mordecai walked back and forth in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and how she fared. Now, when the turn of each young lady came to go into King Ahasuerus, after the end of her 12 months, under the regulation for the women, for the days of their beautification were completed as follows: 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and cosmetics for women. The young lady would go up to the king in this way. Anything she desired was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go in, and in the morning she would return to the second harem, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not again go into the king unless he delighted in her, and she was summoned by name. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter, came to go into the king, she did not request anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the women, advised. And Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus, to his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor and kindness with him more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. Then the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his princes and servants. He also made a holiday for the provinces and gave gifts according to the king's bounty. When the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not yet made known her kindred or her people, even as Mordecai had commanded her. For Esther did what Mordecai told her, as she had done when under his care. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's officials from those who guarded the door, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. But the plot became known to Mordecai, and he told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. Now when the plot was investigated and found to be so, they were both hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. That's foreshadowing. That comes back later. We're going to have a call back to that in a little bit. All right, let's go to Acts chapter 25. Festus then, having arrived in the province 3 days later, went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. And the chief priests and the leading men of the Jews brought charges against Paul, and they were urging him, requesting a concession against Paul, that he might have brought him to Jerusalem, at the same time setting an ambush to kill him on the way. Festus then answered that Paul was being kept in custody at Caesarea, and that he himself was about to leave shortly. Therefore, said he, let the influential men among you go there with me, and if there is anything wrong about the man, let them prosecute him. After he had spent not more than 8 or 10 days among them, he went down to Caesarea, and on the next day he took a seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. After Paul arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him, which they could not prove. While Paul said in his own defense, I have committed no offense, either against the law or the law of the Jews, or against the temple, or against Caesar. But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, answered Paul and said, well, are you willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial before me on these charges? But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. I have done no wrong to the Jews, as you very well know. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die. But if none of those things is true of which these men accuse me, no one can hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, you have appealed to Caesar you shall go. Now, when several days had elapsed, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and paid their respects to Festus. While they were spending many days there, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there's a man who is a prisoner left by Felix. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation, literally death, against him. I answered them that it is not the custom of the Romans to hand any man over before the accused meets his accusers face to face and has an opportunity to make his defense against the charges. So, after they had assembled here, I did not delay, but on the next day I took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought before me. When the accusers stood up, they began bringing charges against him not of such crimes as I was expecting, but they simply had some points of disagreement with him about their own religion and about a dead man, Jesus, whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate such matters, I asked whether he was willing to go to Jerusalem and to stand a trial on these matters. But when Paul appealed to be held in custody for the emperor's decision, I ordered him to be kept in custody until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I also would like to hear the man myself. And tomorrow, said he, you shall. So on the next day, when King Agrippa came together with Bernice amid great pomp, and entered the auditorium accompanied by the commanders and prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus said, "King Agrippa, and all you gentlemen here present with us, you see this man about whom all the people of the Jews appealed to me, both at Jerusalem and here, loudly declaring that he ought not to live any longer." That's that condemnation we talked about before. "But I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death. Since he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to send him. Yet I have nothing definite to write about him to my lord. Therefore, I have brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after the investigation has taken place, I might have something to write. For it seems absurd to me, in sending a prisoner, not to indicate the charges against him." In the Greek, duh. All right, so that's it. We'll go before Paul's defense tomorrow, which is fantastic. Yeah, it'll be good. Looking forward to it. That said, behold, the word of the Lord.